With the 1960s kicking in, the space race was on. About 16 years prior, the Allies came out victorious in World War II. However, two major superpowers emerged: the United States and the Soviet Union. Two extremely different countries split in so many ways. Their most prominent conflict was the space race. The Soviets were strong in the early run, launching the first human into space in April 1961. However, America was close behind, launching their first astronaut, Alan Shepard, a month after. In May of 1962, astronaut Scott Carpenter took to space on the Aurora 7 spacecraft for mission Mercury-Atlas 7. However, during this supposedly ordinary mission, major issues emerged, including an unnecessary consumption of resources. This led to a controversial debate about who was accountable for this nearly horrific occurrence that could have resulted in injury, as well as space regulations, and who actually was at fault. To this day, no actual conclusion has been made. It seemed like this mission wouldn't be all too difficult, as John Glenn was able to do the same in February of that same year. However, things were not going to go as planned. A few major errors would turn this mission into anything but ordinary. The original pilot was astronaut Donald Slayton. However, he was scratched from the mission because of a detected irregularity in his heartbeat. Backup pilot Malcolm Scott Carpenter was then set for the job. Astronaut Carpenter was born May 1st, 1926, in Boulder, Colorado. Carpenter joined the U.S. Navy, serving as a pilot in the Korean War, and then became a test pilot in the 1950s. Carpenter launched at 7:45 a.m. on May 24th, 1962, from Cape Canaveral, Florida. 40 million people watched his first and only mission on TV. During the flight, Scott Carpenter's pitch horizon scanner failed to function. A pitch horizon scanner is a sensor that is responsible for properly aligning the spacecraft's orientation to the planet. It's quite important to any space mission, and when this crucial part of the system failed in flight, Carpenter faced a massive problem. Unknown to him, the horizon scanner optically sensing his spacecraft's pitch attitude was off by about 20 degrees. Fortunately, Carpenter was able to fix the problem. It was found that the circuit for this part of the automatic system had malfunctioned. This anomaly was adequately compensated for by the pilot in subsequent in-flight operations so that the success of the mission was not compromised. If this had not been compensated for, it could have faulted the mission even more. Adding to the issues, the fuel usage during this mission was quite erratic. Carpenter forgot to turn off the manual system during the flight, therefore draining much of the valuable resources. The flight director for this mission, Christopher Kraft, wrote in his memoir, Flight, Carpenter was fascinated by the view and spent too much time and used too much fuel pointing the capsule to look around. He got the camera working and lost himself in taking pictures. Another way Carpenter wasted fuel was by watching a phenomenon known as fireflies. The exhaust emanating from the spacecraft was originally observed by astronaut Glenn. However, NASA did not know what these fireflies were at the time. I could wrap the hatch and stir off hundreds of them, Carpenter reported. Wrap the side of the capsule, huge streams come out. To him, they appeared like snowflakes and did not appear to be luminous, varying in size, brightness, and color. Some were gray, some white, and one in particular, he said, looked like a helical shaving from a lathe. All of this fuel usage severely impacted the mission, as the time for retrofire was closing in. Retrofire is part of the landing sequence, as it helps slow the spacecraft. As retrofire was approaching, another malfunction occurred. The timing mechanism for the retrofire rockets malfunctioned. Carpenter then had to manually turn on the rockets within a second. However, it took him 3 seconds to do so. This may not sound like much, but But with the Aurora 7 spacecraft shooting at 5 miles per second, every second was crucial. As Carpenter fired the rockets, he reported that the orientation was good. However, Carpenter later recalled in his memoir For Spacious Skies that the yaw or vertical rotation of the spacecraft was not desirable. The nose of Aurora 7, while pitched close to the desirable -34 degrees, was canted about 25 degrees off to the right in yaw at the moment of retrofire. By the end of retrofire, I had essentially corrected the error in yaw, which limited the overshoot, but the damage was already done. This would cause Aurora 7 to overshoot the splashdown point by about 280 kilometers, and the 3-second delay would contribute an additional 120 kilometers of overshoot. As his fuel was severely depleted, Carpenter had to make use of the little he had left for re-entry. The automatic fuel tank on Aurora 7 was emptied between 80,000 and 70,000 feet. The oscillations were increasing as the capsule approached the 50,000-foot level. Aurora 7 was swinging beyond the 10-degree tolerable limits. The spacecraft was shaking violently, and the last bit of fuel was used up. Carpenter's only option was to fire the drogue parachutes earlier than planned, at about 25,000 feet. As Carpenter was continuing his descent, he deployed the main parachutes at about 10,000 feet. Finally, the descent came back into control. The capsule communicator, astronaut Gus Grissom, warned Carpenter that his landing was going to be 200 miles or 321 kilometers long, and that search teams were on the way. The world held its breath, hoping that astronaut Carpenter had survived the rocky landing. To their relief, Carpenter was found by rescue teams 45 minutes after splashdown. A few hours later, astronaut Scott Carpenter arrived safely to the debriefing chamber. The second man to orbit the Earth was home. Carpenter's mission was viewed as a success by the general public. However, Mission Control was fuming, especially Flight Director Kraft. He swore that he would never let Carpenter fly again. This was a very controversial and debatable statement. NASA claims that all the failures and difficulties in this mission were Carpenter's fault entirely. They debate that Carpenter should not have been looking around at the view and wasting fuel, and that he should have been more focused on the task at hand. Chris Kraft stated that he believed Scott Carpenter was incompetent for the job and was more of a sightseer than astronaut. However, NASA barely mentions any of the failures in this mission, and to this day have mostly covered it up on their websites. I have reached out to many scientists working at NASA through the phone and email. Unfortunately, they had very little knowledge about this mission and the debate surrounding. Many civilians debate that the result of this mission was NASA's fault, especially Chris Kraft's. They argue that NASA should have had regulations in place that prevented Carpenter from acting the way that he did, and that Kraft should have been more controlling. They also say Kraft threw Carpenter under the bus, but NASA kept counter-debating that this was all on Carpenter. People also argue that Carpenter was competent, contradicting Flight Director Kraft, and that NASA had incompetent people in mission control. With the rapid acceleration of the space race, more missions were successfully completed. But the lessons learned from Scott Carpenter's work greatly impacted the future of the space race. However, the contributions from Scott Carpenter were buried under the more successful space projects, and many believe that he did not receive appropriate recognition. Interestingly, to date, the controversy behind the faulty mission was not resolved. Many people turned their attention to NASA's many new missions, such as Gemini and Apollo, and soon forgot about the controversial Mercury-Atlas 7 mission. We should not forget and ignore our past mistakes. Instead, we need to understand the failures and incorporate the lessons learned from them for the future. Importantly, we should give proper recognition for each and every mission, highlighting the successes and failures, the debates, and the conclusions.